Yo guys, what's going on? It's Dcroft here, back for the Week 18 matchup. And for this week, we're going to do actually something a little bit different. It's the last week of the season, so what I'm going to do is just kind of talk about my Madden season. I'm going to go over, the Seahawks season as well. Earlier we also had the Cardinals Club Champion on too. So you guys were already able to see the Cardinals Club Champion. I thought this would honestly be a good time to reflect on the entirety of the year. What I'm also doing is I'm actually just in the background. You guys are able to see we are simulating right now the Seahawks against the Cardinals matchup for this upcoming week. But yeah, in terms of this matchup and everything, this game technically has no meaning for the Seahawks, but it actually has a lot of meaning for the Cardinals. If the Cardinals are able to win in this upcoming game's matchup, if the Rams also lose, they'll end up actually clinching the division, which is a huge thing when it comes to these playoffs, being able to get that one home game. I'm not exactly sure who that changes in terms of who they can potentially play. Honestly, I know that, the teams still able to make the playoffs are the Saints, the 49ers, are the last two teams. I think all the other six teams are currently locked in. But I think it would just be a great way to be able to end our season because you know how much meaning this game has for the Cardinals. When you look at other teams at the point in this year, it's very likely that, two teams can match up where the game has zero meaning for both teams. So hopefully we are able to end off the season strong, especially coming off that Lions game. I was lucky enough the Seahawks gave me tickets to go to that Lions game. And that was just such a great game to go to. Kind of even though that game didn't have any meaning or anything, it was just really, really cool, to see us play so well. Penny have, kind of this end of season stretch that he's having was super cool to see. On top of just seeing, finally, everything just finally, clicked for us on offense and defense, which was super cool to see. As you guys see right there, Russ end up missing a throw. But we are going to talk more about the Madden side of it. In terms of, just competitive Madden, I haven't had as much time to talk about, my competitive Madden season and how it ended up going for me this year. So in all honesty, this year kind of started off pretty slow for me. The first two tournaments that I had this year weren't exactly the best tournaments for me. But as you guys see, Rashad Penny almost actually get out right there. But this last tournament that I was in, I think there was one week that I ended up actually not being able to record this because of the tournament that I was in. I had a really good tournament at the very end, but I just wasn't able to get to the live event. I think I was either 1 or 2 rounds away from making the live event. I think I technically finished 13th overall in the tournament, which again, I needed really to get Final Four in the top tournament, 3rd, to be able to get that spot in Madden Bowl, to get really back where I wanted to be. But that was kind of like my Madden season, honestly. I started off way slower, and it really forced me, at the end of the year to really just have a really, really good year in terms of being able to make Madden Bowl. But with that being said, there is still one more tournament, Last Chance Qualifier, which I actually have one before to get to Madden Bowl, which is basically, it's just a 32-man field, and the person that wins that tournament is guaranteed a spot in Madden Bowl, which is super cool to see. As you guys see Lockett right there get going too. But yeah, that was kind of my Madden season, honestly. For me, I definitely had a lot more hopes in terms of, when you look at a competitive Madden player, the goal is honestly always to make Madden Bowl. As you guys see Russ get a touchdown right there for the Seahawks as they go up 7-0. But that's always the goal for a Madden player, is to always be in Madden Bowl. I think obviously winning a tournament, is everybody's end goal. But if you ask anybody, they're always going to tell you they want to make Madden Bowl no matter what. As you guys see, I actually really like, the simulating aspect of Madden. You're actually able to see some pretty cool replays too. Doing it here just at the end of the season, because as I said, you guys have already seen the Cardinals Club Champion. I feel like it'd be a good time to reflect, as Jason Myers makes the extra point there too. But yeah, I think that, in terms of any Madden players and their goals, making Madden Bowl is always going to be their number one goal outside of winning a tournament. Obviously, every single Madden player wants to win a tournament, but making Madden Bowl is just such a huge thing for you. And for me, luckily, I was able to make Madden Bowl the last 2 years. Still have a chance this year, not exactly the path I've potentially wanted to take. I'd love to get an automatic qualification through my other finishes throughout the year. But here we are in last chance qualifier again. I know I've been through it again. So I am very hopeful that we are able to get into the bowl. And essentially, that Madden Bowl would take place at the time of the Super Bowl. Now, I will say something about Madden that is kind of indifferent in terms of what's going to end up happening is if Madden Bowl is in person or not. I originally thought Madden Bowl was going to be in person. I was actually going to be really surprised if it wasn't in person. But the closer it's actually getting to Madden Bowl, I think it's honestly going to be online again. And, that is something, it would be really just nice to have these, like, in-person events again. These in-person events, they're just such a really cool experience. And there's really no way to replicate, what Madden kind of is if you aren't able to, like, play in those in-person events. Playing cross-country, you deal with, like, so many other things in terms of, lagging in between the games. Just like playing from your own home is honestly like super bizarre to me too, in like the magnitude of these games. So hopefully Madden Bowl is in person, but as I said, the closer it actually keeps getting to Madden Bowl, I would be kind of surprised if it was. As you guys see Kyler there make a crazy throw. Oh my goodness. That was almost like one of the crazier Madden plays I've ever seen. I thought DJ Reed was about to pick it, but Andy Isabella, I think that was actually almost ended up catching it right there. That was actually an insane play. I really actually thought he was about to catch that there. But yeah, hopefully Madden Bowl is in person. I think it would take place in LA if I had to guess. And if it wasn't to be LA, it would be San Francisco because that's where the head studio is. Did you actually see us send a blitz right there as AJ Green makes a great catch right there on DJ Reed. But yeah, going back to the Seahawks matchup here, you guys actually saw DJ Reed just targeted there twice. DJ Reed had a really, really good game this past week, catching 2 interceptions. Really hope that's, something that we can build off of for this upcoming year. I'll be interested to see, we talked about it a little bit the last time. I think if there is one question mark on our team that could be addressed through free agency on the defensive side of the ball, it was that cornerback position. And it really just had to do, DJ Reed's been kind of injured this year. Trey Brown, our rookie corner, ended up getting injured earlier on in the year too. Just kind of that position, if we were to looking to add more depth or more pieces, I was leaning towards that being the direction we would do it, especially with the history we have of drafting late round corners too and developing them. I wouldn't be surprised if we looked at potentially adding a couple of guys at the cornerback position. And then we obviously talked about the offensive line situation. Both of our tackles are free agents for this upcoming year. So I'd be very hopeful in terms of, if it wasn't re-signing those guys back, Teron Armstead, I think is a guy, if he does hit the open market, would be really interesting. Another player that I actually just read about was actually Trent Brown too. Played for the Patriots, played for the Raiders. Just a very good offensive tackle. If he were to end up letting Brandon Shell walk, I think that would be a great player to look at too. And talking in terms a little bit too about the Cardinals and I think what is in store for them, as you guys see Kyler. Oh, Bobby Wagner makes a pick right there. I'm actually really hopeful that Bobby Wagner can play this week. Had that not a significant knee injury by any means this past week, but probably a knee injury that could potentially hold him out for the season finale. And I think for him, just ending the season that he's having on the field would be super, super nice. Because I was reading something that, he had just broken, I think it was in week 15, the all-time tackle record in Seattle, Seahawks history. But if he doesn't play in week 18, Jordan Brooks, you guys just saw on the screen right there, actually will probably end up breaking that record because he would only end up needing 6 tackles, Jordan Brooks, to end up breaking that record. And I think just Bobby Wagner being able to be on the field for that last game, I think it would just be like a great way to end the season. But at the same time, you do kind of have to look at, is a game that technically has no meaning for us. If there is any risk of re-injury or anything along the lines of that, I don't think it is, worth putting that risk out there. But yeah, I think another interesting thing in terms of the Seahawks going forward is kind of what it looks like for Rashad Penny. Was drafted in the first round in 2018. had injuries throughout most of his career, and that was actually something very, very disappointing in terms of just, when coming out of college, the Seahawks talked about it a lot in terms of he had one of the highest injury grades um, that they had ever scouted out of any running back, which is just like the possibility of getting injury was just so low on him. And, for his career, it's just been, so just up and down just purely because of the injuries. He had that ACL tear, and even his rookie year going into the season, he was hurt there too. But he's finally starting to find that groove, of being that first round pick that, we ended up taking him with. And he is scheduled to be a free agent. You guys see Gerald Everett, who's also a free agent too in the offseason. There's a lot of decisions the Seahawks have to make in the offseason, in all honesty. But I think that Gerald Everett is another player that I would love to see us keep. I think that he's been really good for us. He had that one game against the 49ers that was definitely probably a little, 3 fumbles in that game, a little roadblock for him. But I think he'd be a great tight end to keep. And I just really like how he plays too, and the physicality that he plays with. As you guys see, we just hit the 2-minute warning here in Madden 2. I think he's would be a great player to keep around, at least for another year, and see how he ends up doing. But Rashad Penny, I actually would really love to see him back too. I think there was a little bit before he had that ACL tear where him and Carson were looking like a really, really good 1-2 punch. And I was really excited to see how that would end up developing. Then he suffers that ACL tear against the Rams, and then out for the rest of that season, and really just the next season. Never really felt like the player that he was starting to emerge into. And even this year, he had a couple of hamstring injuries. He had a calf strain. And finally, at the end of the season, he's finally starting to hit that shot. And I just think it's a really good thing for him too, in terms of being able to finally show what he's capable of. Because this really, could be like a career revitalizing end of season stretch for him. So hopefully he is able to build off of that. In terms of other things, in terms of the Seahawks, can't really say a ton else in terms of what I anticipate the team to do. There's obviously the whole rumors of Russ leaving and everything. For me, honestly, I just always think that stuff is overblown. I think that Russ has never really wanted to leave by any means. I think he's always been a player that's wanted to play here for as long as possible. So I'd be very surprised if anything happens right there. As you guys see right there, DS is almost able to score. As you guys see, we end up taking a timeout right there. Eskridge almost able to score right there. He actually almost had an insane play at the very end of the game of that Seahawks Lions, of being able to score on that end around too. And hopefully Eskridge is another player that, this offseason can develop, because he was another player, in the offseason had a couple of injury problems, and then early on in the year, that very first game he played, he actually ended up getting a concussion from it. That was a pretty lengthy concussion, held him out there for a long time. But you guys see Rashad Penny, he's getting tackled at the one there. I thought he was going to be able to get a reach for it and be able to score right there. But yeah, no, I think when you're looking at the opposite side of this matchup and kind of what the future holds for the Cardinals too, I think the Cardinals are in a very, very win now mode. I would be very surprised if this team wasn't able to make some noise in the playoff. They started off so hot too, as you guys see right there. Rashad Penny dives in the end zone and is able to get 7 there. But very, very hot at the start of the season. Extremely hot. Kind of similar to how they were last year too. But as the season's gone on, Kyler ended up getting hurt. DeAndre Hopkins has been hurt throughout the year. Now J.J. Watt is out for the year too. It's been definitely probably a disappointing second half of the season to them. But I think you have to look once you're in the playoffs, really anything can happen. You look at the Buccaneers last year. They lost to the Saints twice in the regular season, and they didn't just lose to them too. They got dominated in one of their games at home. So you guys see Jason Myers kick is up, and kick is good right there. I would just be very, very surprised if the Cardinals weren't able to do something in the playoffs, and they are coming off a very good win against the Cowboys too. I do want to say, I believe the Cowboys is the most likely matchup they're going to end up playing against. Not 100% sure, just from talking to one of my Cowboys friends. It does seem like playing the Cowboys in the first round seems very, very likely. But obviously, seeding and a lot of the stuff can change. I know the Packers have clinched the top seed. I would assume the Bucks are probably I would want to assume that they'll probably end up basically guaranteed the second seed if they end up winning this upcoming week. But I know if they end up losing and the Rams end up winning, there's probably a way that they can also flip flop there too. But yeah, it would be super, super interesting. I think when you talk about this playoff field, and honestly, talking about like this playoff field and my personal favorites in this playoff field, I really actually have to lean with the Packers. I think that I just don't honestly see the Packers not being able to get to the Super Bowl this year. I think, and I've said this for a while, I honestly think the two best teams in the NFC are still probably the Packers and the Bucks. I think they've showed the two most consistency out of any of the other teams this year, as you guys see. Screen goes dark, let me make sure I turn it up right there. But I think they've just been the two teams that have been able to show the most amount of consistency throughout the entirety of the year. I will say for the Buccaneers losing Chris Godwin, that's a pretty big injury for them. And now, everything that's happening with AB, it is going to be a big thing for them to overcome losing two of their top three wide receivers. But I just think Tom Brady really just is way, way too good. He still has Gronk. Leonard Fournette's going to be back for the playoff run. I think that is probably my second favorite team in terms of being able to get back to the Super Bowl. And then after that, probably my third favorite team, I would probably have to say at that point is the Rams. As much as I am a Seahawks fan, and I don't want to, talk, up these other teams too much, I do actually really like the Rams in a lot of aspects, as I think we're about to see an illegal forward pass right there by Kyler. Let me just double check. Yep, illegal forward pass right there by Kyler. But I think Stafford is, a huge step up from Goff. I just think Stafford still shows a few inconsistencies here and there that I think might potentially hurt them in the playoffs. They've played the Packers in Lambeau already, and they weren't able to get it done there. So I would be surprised if they were able to get it done there. I actually really think we're going to end up seeing another Packers-Bucks NFC Championship, and I think the Packers are going to win that, personally. Going to the AFC side of things, I will say that the AFC side of things, I am personally a huge, huge fan of, as you guys see, the Cardinals are actually just going to end up running it here. So the Seahawks take a timeout, and we do end up actually taking a timeout right there. Hopefully we are able to get 3 before half here. But when you're talking about the Seahawks, the AFC, I was a huge believer in the Chiefs, even when they were at 2-3, having a slow start to the season. I was a huge believer in the Chiefs. I just always thought they were going to figure out their issues, and they ended up doing that and figuring out all the issues. And, they went on I think it was a 9-1 stretch here before they actually ended up losing to the Bengals. I think the Bengals are actually a really interesting team because they've really, honestly, they've kind of come out of nowhere. They've had some, they lost to the Jets earlier in the year. They've had up and down, parts of their season, but they've also been super competitive against some very good teams. They could have easily beat the Packers. They just beat the Chiefs. They have 2 very convincing wins over the Ravens, who, the Ravens, I don't think record is as good as they show. Honestly, I think the Ravens are a lot better than what the record shows. They've been dealing with a ton of injury problems themselves, too. But I think the Bengals are a super interesting team. And then when you look at the other team, the AFC, in terms of, that entire conference, is one of the most competitive conferences I've ever seen. It's part of the reason why I wanted to bring it up, too, because I just think that it is a super interesting thing to talk about in terms of just how competitive that conference is, because I've really never seen anything like it. I think the NFC side, it's a little bit more clear in terms of who the favorites are and everything. If we're talking about the AFC side of things, I think everything is wide open. I will say, though, for me personally, there's kind of 3 teams that I really like more than any of the other teams. First team is going to be the Bengals. I think they have shown me enough to be one of the elite teams. I think the next one is the Chiefs. I still stand by the Chiefs. I think they are a very good team. This is probably going to surprise a few people, but I really like the Bills too. I think those are probably my 3 favorite teams in terms of the AFC. But with that actually being said, my AFC prediction in terms of, I'm just going to predict conference championships and everything. My prediction of honestly who's going to end up making the conference championship, I'm going to have the Chiefs. I think they are going to end up going back. And this is probably going to surprise people because they weren't actually just in the top 3 favorite teams that I just listed. But I actually think the Pats are going to find a way to be able to make that conference championship. I don't know why. I just kind of have this weird feeling that, we're going to see Belichick against Brady in the Super Bowl. I've just kind of had this weird feeling for a while that that's going to be end up something that we end up seeing, and it's honestly probably what I'm kind of leaning towards wanting to see. I think it would just be such a cool thing to see, honestly, as a football fan, to have that matchup. So I am actually gonna go with the Pats. I'm not gonna pick the same AFC Championship game too. I could really see the Bills honestly getting back. I really could see the same AFC Championship games repeating this year too. I think that would be a little bit boring though, honestly, if I was to pick the same side on both things. So I do have the Pats against the Bucks, and then honestly in the Super Bowl, I probably do have the Bucks winning again. I just think the Bucks are really just such a well balanced team all around. Or excuse me, I have the Packers. Sorry, I have the Packers. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I do think the Packers are going to be the team that ends up winning the NFC. So I have the Packers against the Patriots, and I do think the Packers are probably the most balanced team in terms of all of football right now. I just think that the way A-Rod has been playing this year is just still at the same super high level that I was playing at last year, even after all the offseason drama that was going on. I just think that he is still one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and I think this is the year that he finally gets back to the Super Bowl, and he ends up winning it too. But with that also being said, kind of talking more on the NFC side of things, and then back to the Seahawks. I'm super excited to see in terms of also, what comes from our draft too, because even if we don't have a first round pick, this is going to be, a relatively high second round pick that we have this year. Believe it'll probably end up somewhere late 30s, early 40s if I had to end up guessing. So I'm super excited to see what it comes from too. And we do actually have an extra fourth round pick this year too. I actually just looked at this the other day. We have a second, a third round pick. We have two fourth round picks. We have our fifth round pick. And then the sixth round pick we ended up trading for Sidney Jones. So we don't have that pick, but then we have our seventh round pick too. So we basically have, our rest of our picks, basically have our entire draft. As you guys see, Bobby Wagner right there, able to force a fumble, and LJ Collier right there, picking it up. Now this has actually been a super dominating game. I would love to see this to be able to end off our season from the Seahawks right there. You guys see Bobby Wagner, as I said, hopefully he is able to play this upcoming week, but if he's not, totally understand, just not risking any potential risk of any further injury. But yeah, going back to, let's say, more of a Madden aspect and Madden side of everything, this is just kind of my plans going forward with Madden for the rest of the year. I do plan on streaming on Twitch. The Seahawks show me so much love on their channels that if you guys also want to make sure to comment your guys' predictions for the Super Bowl and the Conference Championship, now would be the time. And if you guys could also like and subscribe, it does really mean a ton in terms of what they are trying to grow here. And being a part of it has been super cool. For me, being a part of this has been just such a great experience, and they've given me, so many cool opportunities. In terms of just like the support they've showed too, has just always been, I always thought over the moon in terms of the Madden aspect of things. When you look at other NFL teams, there aren't as many NFL teams that are super involved in terms of Madden and everything. But the Seahawks, since the very beginning of Madden, have always been super involved with it. They've always been reaching out to me in terms of, wishing me luck in tournaments. They've been sending me to their games, training camps and everything. Just really, really just cool, experiences all around. But for me going forward, honestly, I don't really know what, is going to end up happening for me going forward. I will say one thing that I know 100% for sure. I'm actually going to be ending up going back to college this upcoming year. I've been at community college for these past couple of years, but, with COVID and everything, I definitely haven't been probably fully focused on school. I would say I've just been taking classes here and there. But next semester, I'm 100% going to end up going to college. And I'm going to be going there partially because of how big the Madden scene is also growing in college. I think now is just like the right time for me to go to college and start growing in that aspect. And it really just gives me more of a competitive aspect too. But in terms of like a content plan, I do plan on streaming Twitch throughout the rest of the year. But I will say, I don't 100% know what my plan is going with content. As you guys see, trying to find Rashad Penny at the back of the end zone right there. Russ wasn't able to fit it in there. But it'll be interesting to see where everything ends up going for me. Because I will say, after this experience and everything that, part of me loves doing like, content and everything and making content. But the real reason why I got into Madden was, for the competitive aspect of it. And I think doing well in competitive Madden next year is definitely going to be like 100% my focus. And honestly, that was 100% my focus this year, but it obviously didn't go where I wanted. So if it was 100% this year, I need to take it even higher that next year. And in terms of plans that I have going forwards with the Seahawks, it'll be, they have their weekly Madden tournaments every single time. They actually have a weekly Madden tournament going on PS5 and Xbox this upcoming week here too. And I'll be making sure to tweet it out on all my socials tomorrow when this goes live. But yeah, no, definitely super excited to see what they have. The Seahawks sandbox. They're really one of the only NFL teams, working with rival games, giving away thousands of dollars in, merchandise, gift cards, running these tournaments in all aspects of video games. Because that's the really cool thing that I love about the Seahawks and what they're doing. It's really not just the Madden scene they're trying to start, growing in. It's really just the entire video game scene. There's Call of Duty games that you can play on there. Call of Duty Vanguard, I know, is like a super popular game right now. I will say, I don't really play any other video games myself. I'm just a big football guy, so I really only ever play Madden. But they are really trying to, grow a community here. And, that's obviously why Seahawks Sandbox and everything was launched. So hopefully if you guys show support, you guys are active and you guys are playing in those tournaments, it can keep growing and it can only get bigger from here is the goal from everybody. One of my actually personal favorite events that I've always done with the Seahawks, and we've done this the past 2 years, is the Seahawk Showdown. And for anybody that's wondering what the Seahawk Showdown is, it's basically like a larger Madden tournament where, if you get through the entire tournament, you actually get to end up playing me at the end of the tournament. And if you end up beating me in the tournament, you actually get to get a free PlayStation or a free Xbox of your choosing. And I'm hopeful we'll end up doing that again this next year too. But that's probably one of my favorite events. I got to play 4 people in that. Sadly, I haven't gone 4 for 4 in that. I did actually lose one of the games in there. But every single one of the games I've actually played has always been like, it's come down to like the last minute, the last play multiple times. There was one time I kicked like a 57-yard field goal with no time left. There was another time where I was on like a 4th and like 15 for the game, and I ended up converting it to win the game too. I want to say the other win I had was a pretty easy win, but then the loss I ended up having, it just came down to the final 2-point play that I ended up losing in that game too. So I always think that it is personally a ton of fun to play in those Seahawks Showdowns. So hopefully that is something, to be able to continue to do in the future too. But with this game dwindling down right now, the Seahawks are actually dominating this game. I always love the simulations because they really can always go one of two ways. You never really know how these simulations are going to go. You guys can see right here, the Cardinals really haven't got anything going on offense. Bobby Wagner really forcing turnovers on their only 2 drives that they have had. So you guys see right there, Kyler. Maybe the Cardinals will start to get something going right here. Because that's the thing, talking about the real life matchup again. Is the Cardinals really want to find any type of momentum going into the playoffs. That belief they can end up making a deep run. Because I think so many of these teams that end up making deep runs in the playoffs, they probably ended their season off with a win, or at least strong, in terms of being able to get into the playoffs. Trying to think of like other things to cover here too. I think for the most part, I've honestly gone over everything I've wanted to in terms of what I wanted to talk about. We'll just watch the matchup here for a little bit. You guys see Kyler hitting underneath the middle of the field. I'm actually super excited. You guys see right there the continued development of Jordan Brooks. I want to say he's 3rd in tackles in the NFL right now. I didn't even know about this. For Sadie Zolakon, who is the Falcons linebacker, has actually completely blown the just NFL tackle record out of the water. Apparently, he has like 179 tackles or something like that. And Wagner, I want to say Wagner has 167, and then I want to say Brooks has 162. Don't quote me on these numbers. I'm probably going to be slightly off on these numbers. But I think Jordan Brooks, in terms of, first-round picks, definitely has to be looked at as one of our best previous first-round picks. And just seeing how he continues to develop him alongside Wagner, I think is something super exciting to see as the next season ends up going along. 1st and 10 right here, though, for the Cardinals. See if they are actually able to get anything going here. They're actually throwing a screen here to James Conner. Gets tackled and bounces. I do wish one thing about Madden simulation, the computer had a little bit more self-awareness in terms of going out of bounds and everything. Don't get me wrong. This game is probably over at this point, but would have been cool to just see James Conner go out of bounds and at least trying to preserve as much time as possible for any type of comeback they could end up having. See if Kyler's able to get this off before the 2-minute warning, and he is not. It's going to just hit the 2-minute warning. But yeah, we'll go back to Seahawks sandbox actually here for a little bit. I really actually think the Seahawks sandbox is one of the, best ideas in a long time that I've personally seen, just in really any idea come up with. And it really is because it gives you guys so many opportunities to play in these tournaments. I think what's super cool about these, these are free to enter. You don't have to pay any money. You guys see Kyler make an insane throw right there. Probably never what you're supposed to do as a quarterback, but is actually able to complete it right there. But yeah, it's free to play, and it's really all genres of video games, which is really, really cool. Because I understand that, people that watch football maybe aren't necessarily fans of also Madden too, and they end up playing their own video games. I actually know a lot of Madden players too that actually aren't even fans of the NFL. There's actually quite a few really good Madden players too that actually have zero interest in the NFL. They just happen to really like Madden, and they really have always liked the concept of it. But when it comes to the Seahawks, they are trying to get into all spaces and all aspects of the video game world. And really, they are investing a lot into it just because of what you guys see with these tournaments and everything. And obviously having these weekly showdowns with me too. In terms of a content aspect too, me interested to see what happens over these summers. You guys see Kyler. He's going up top right there. He is able to actually complete a pass. They'll probably end up onside kicking here. See if they can give themselves a chance. Rondell Moore right there, able to make a big reception right there. At least give the Cardinals a chance. If they get an onside kick, they score within like 40, 50 seconds, or probably like 40 seconds, honestly. Then there'll be like 40 seconds left in the game. It's pretty unlikely that they end up coming back in this game. But that is just something as a Madden player too that goes through my head of trying to figure out every scenario that I end up having to win too, which I think is something in terms of like a Madden player, their end of game management. I will say is if there's any value that Madden players could ever potentially add value to an NFL team, because this has been a hot topic debate in terms of what Madden players could actually add in terms of like the NFL game. I really will say that the only thing that they could ever add is literally just game management. I do not have anywhere near the football background enough to understand like play concepts that would work in the NFL. Trust me, in Madden, I understand like the glitches within the game, but it's really just end of game management, and then it's also just game management throughout the game. So for me here, honestly, what my thought process is here, you have to get one onside kick. If you don't get one onside kick, this game is honestly over. Because really, the Seahawks can just kneel this one out. They're actually kicking it deep here, which I wouldn't personally do. Oh, wait, never mind. It looked like they were kicking it deep there. Completely ignored me. You guys see right here, we are able to pick it up. And we are borderline field goal range here right now to 38. It is technically actually field goal range, if I had to guess. I don't know. I mean, we'll just talk about it in a real life aspect. It is borderline field goal range in terms of real life. One first down here definitely ends up ending the game. But I think that, in terms of like a Madden aspect, John Madden, rest in peace to him, he would always talk about, Madden a ton just because, that's the video game that he ended up essentially helping create and everything. And he was actually always really fascinated in terms of, what Madden players could always add to the game. And he actually kind of talked about the Madden competitive scene a little bit. I actually heard some stories after his passing from people at EA, just like sharing memories of him and everything, that he was always actually really fascinated by competitive Madden, and that he understands why competitive Madden players play in such a specific way, which I always thought was really interesting. And he definitely kind of agreed that, if there was something that Madden players could end up adding to NFL teams, it would just be game management. And the real reason for that is because Madden players are just playing so many games. Like for me, personally, this is an insane number. Trust me, I get it. But I've probably personally played in my time of Madden. As you guys see, DJ Dallas almost get the first down right there. That should definitely be field goal range now, though. And a field goal would also just completely end this game here, too. But Madden players just play so many games, where our clock management just has to be perfect to win so many of these games. So we just see so many more scenarios just by playing this amount of Madden that could potentially be helpful eventually to NFL teams. I think when you look at the NFL right now, it's kind of, I guess, like in terms of like the new age, you guys see Alex Collins able to get the first down, which will officially seal the game right there. But I guess like the new age of the NFL right now is just like this whole like analytical excuse me, where teams are starting to actually really look at analytics. The big ones are obviously the Ravens, who really take that into account more than any other NFL team. But it'd be kind of interesting to see just the continued development of football. Maybe Madden players eventually get involved, 20, 30 years from now. Maybe it's 5 years from now. Who knows what it may end up being. But I do think it is a very interesting aspect of, this whole concept of football that, I don't know if it'll ever get added. I'm super hopeful that, maybe Madden players one day will end up adding value to NFL teams. But with that being said, as you guys can see here, Russ kneeling it out right here. Great way to end the season in the Madden aspect of anything. A 21-7 win. My personal score prediction for this upcoming week is that I do think that it's going to be a pretty high scoring game. Personally, I'm going to go 31-28 Seahawks for this upcoming week. If you guys want to leave your predictions in the comments, and make sure if you guys do go down to the comments, make sure to like and subscribe while you guys are there. But with that being said, that is officially the end of the Seahawks showdown. Not Seahawks showdown, Seahawks weekly series. I can't thank you guys enough for supporting this throughout the entirety of the year. And with that being said, I will see you guys all next time.